Great. Hare Krishna.
Did I need to post that still?
It's fine. It's okay. Ashim. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Great. Sorry about the delay.
No, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's this is our first time doing something on Zoom. So yeah. But we're here now, we figured it out. Thank you for bearing with us.
No, it's okay.
So there's quite a few people in the Facebook group who've said they wanted to join. So we're just going to give it 1 minute. And
I think you can accept. Lucy's trying to come in.
Great. We'll give it 1 minute while a couple of people arrive. And I think what we'll, yeah, then we'll just run through how it's going to work.
Sure.
And
Prabhupada.
we'll get going. Hare Krishna. Great to see you, Ashim, and Lucy, and Aaron also. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Great. So I know Krishna Bhajan Prabhu in Florida was waiting to get in, but we'll see what happens. He may come, he may not. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're all here.
Yeah. I'm just.
And it's 20 to 7, so we'll just get started. And just for this week, I'll run through quickly how it will work on a week-by-week basis. It'll be very simple, short program, really, but I'll explain now, and then anybody who joins later can look back at this video and they'll just see how it all works. But it'll be simple. So usually whenever we do a program, we kind of bookend it with kirtan at either end. But obviously, when the kirtan gets a bit ecstatic, it takes a lot of time. So, you know, we don't always have 2 hours or something every evening to spare. So for Tuesdays, we'll just be doing mainly focused on reading, just hearing about Srila Prabhupada, and we'll just go through this Lilamrta, this book, Prabhupada Lilamrta, from start to finish. So I will post, now there should be a chat somewhere here, chat. So I will post in the chat a link to the online version of Lilamrta, and also to a couple of prayers that we will chant. And then you can get, if you want to, you can just listen. And if you want to, you can read along online, like that. And then in future weeks, if somebody else wants to read instead of us, we can take it in turns to read or whatever we want. So basically the program will just be that we'll read, and then at the end we'll have a little bit of time for like reflections, comments, some appreciation for Srila Prabhupada and his disciples and so on. And that'll be it, really. So before we start, we thought in place of like a kirtan, we'd chant each week these prayers called Mangala Charanam prayers. So some people will know them. Some people might know of them, but don't know them. And some people may have never heard them before. They can be found. I'm going to post a link in the chat. I'll do it now. Here you go. There's 2 links. The first one in the chat is for the Veda-based link to the Lilamrta online version. And the second one is a link to the Mangala Charanam prayers. So they're just prayers glorifying Radha and Krishna, Krishna's devotees. There's the Panchatattva mantra, And anyway, there's all these different prayers. Prabhupada put them at the beginning of his introduction to Bhagavad Gita. That's the link that I put there. And the idea is that we chant these prayers. Prabhupada said anything that follows will be auspicious if you just chant these prayers. So by chanting the prayers, they actually give us the strength, spiritual strength, to carry out whatever yajna, whatever sacrifice we're about to perform. So they're chanted at the beginning of, sometimes a class or an initiation ceremony or a wedding and whatever. So we can just carry out this little sacrifice. So we'll chant them at the beginning, and the general program, I won't explain this every week, but the general program will just be at 6:30, we'll chant these Mangalacharanam prayers. Then we'll read and have time to reflect like that. So with everyone's permission, all the devotees' permission, we will begin this great journey, this great sacrifice of reading Srila Prabhupada's pastimes online. So if you want to join in, you can hit this link, asitis.com, and you can get the Mangalacharanam prayers there. And we'll do it call and response. So Hema will lead us, as he so often does. And I'll get the prayer.
Mantra, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Aaron. Yeah, I just heard that.
Okay, cool. Are we supposed to be muted, or like? Because I think everyone else on the chat is muted. So I just wanted to check if that's how it works, because I haven't used this before.
Aaron, that's a brilliant point. So yeah, generally, I think after 3 months of lockdown, most people have got the kind of Zoom, Skype etiquette down. We're quite used to doing it, but not everyone has. So thank you for bringing that up. I actually had it in mind all day to mention that, and I totally forgot. So generally, it's a hell of a lot easier for everyone if we're all muted, apart from the person that's reading or speaking, because as more people join the group, there's like tons of background noise and feedback and whatever.
Dogs barking, kids crying,
sirens and whatever's going on. So yeah, thank you, Aaron. It's a really good point. So yeah, if everybody can keep muted, and we'll do the Mangalacharanam and the reading, and then at the end, if anyone has any points or reflections we can all share, then obviously by all means unmute then, and we can talk. Yeah. So that's a great point. Thank you, Aaron, for doing that. I think I've set this group so that when you enter, when we start the chat, everyone that joins is automatically muted. Hopefully that was the case when you all joined in. So everyone should be automatically, muted. And then if we've got the chat box here to type anything, and also if you really need to, if you can see that the house is burning down behind us and we can't see it, you can unmute yourself and let us know. So yeah, great. Thanks, Aaron. That's a really good point. I'm just going to get the Mangalacharanam up myself, and then we'll do it. So I'm guessing everyone can hear properly. The sound is all working. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thumbs up all round. Great. So we'll chant these prayers, and then we'll begin this week. We'll do the preface, the introduction, and the invocation. And actually, we'll start chapter 1 next week. Because time-wise, that will probably be about right. So we'll do the Mangalacharanam prayers. Is that all right, Hema? Great. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru
Shri Yuta Padakamalam
Shri Yuta Padakamalam
Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha
Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha
Shri Rupam Sagrajatam
Shri Rupam Sagrajatam
Sadhana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam
Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam
Sadvetam Savadutam
Sadvetam Savadutam
Harijana Sahitam
Parijana Sahitam
Krishna Chaitanya Devam
Krishna Chaitanya Devam
Shri Radha Krishna Padam
Shri Radha Krishna Padam
Sadhana Lalita
Sagana Lalita
Shri Vishakanvitamscha
Shri Vishakanvitamscha
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
Dinabandho Jagapate
Dinabandho Jagatpate
Gopisha Gopika Kanta
Gopisha Gopika Kanta
Radha Kanta Namostute
Radha Kanta Namostute
Tapta Kanchana Gaurange
Tapta Kanchana Gorangi
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Vrishabhanu Sute Devi
Rishabhanu Sute Devi
Pranamami Hari Priye
Pranamami Hari Priye
Vanchakapatarubhyascha
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Kripa Sindhubhyo eva cha
Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shri Vasari Gaura Bhattarinda
Shri Vasani Gauram Bhaktavrinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna. We'll read just one short text, very short paragraph, just glorifying the pure devotee of Krishna. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, purport to 3rd canto, 22nd chapter, 21st text. Pure devotees are so absorbed in thought of Krishna that they have no other engagement. Although they may seem to think or act otherwise, they are always thinking of Krishna. The smile of such a Krishna-conscious person is so attractive that simply by smiling, he wins so many admirers, disciples, and followers. Hare Krishna. So we'll read the preface. I flicked through some of this and it was really sweet. So we'll read the preface and the introduction and the invocation. Great. The preface is written by Satsvarup Maharaj, who's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he was given the task. He's a very prolific writer. He's a sannyasi, and he was given the task of writing this biography of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. So he says, after the disappearance of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada from this mortal world on November 14th, 1977, many of his disciples saw a need for an authorized biography of Srila Prabhupada. The responsibility of commissioning such a work rested with the governing body commission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. At their annual meeting in 1978, the GBC resolved that a biography of Srila Prabhupada should be written and that I would be the author. According to the Vaishnava tradition, if one aspires to write transcendental literature, he must first take permission from his spiritual master in Krishna. A good example of this is Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's authorized biography, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. As Krishna Das Kaviraj has explained, in Vrindavan there were also many other great devotees, all of whom desired to hear the last pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. By their mercy, all these devotees ordered me to write of the last pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because of their order only, although I am shameless, I have attempted to write this Chaitanya Charitamrita. Having received the order of the Vaishnavas, but being anxious within my heart, I went back to the temple of Madan Mohan in Vrindavan to ask his permission also. So to say that Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta is an authorized biography does not mean that it is a flattering portrait commissioned by an official body, but that it is an authorized literature presented by one who is serving the order of Krishna and Guru through the disciplic succession. As such, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta is not written from the mundane or speculative viewpoint, nor can ordinary biographers comprehend the significance and meaning of the life of a pure devotee of God. Were such persons to objectively study the life of Srila Prabhupada, the esoteric meanings would evade them. Were they to charitably try to praise Srila Prabhupada, they would not know how. But because Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta is authorized through the transcendental process, it can transparently present the careful reader with a true picture of Srila Prabhupada. Another important aspect of the authenticity of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta is the vast amount of carefully researched information that I am able to focus into each volume. The leading devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement, in addition to giving me permission to render this work, have also invited the world community of ISKCON devotees to help me in gathering detailed information about the life and person of Srila Prabhupada. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Prabhupada's publishing house, has given me his collection of letters, totaling over 7,000, and scores of Prabhupada's disciples have granted interviews and submitted diaries and memoirs of their association with Srila Prabhupada. Aside from his disciples, we have interviewed many persons in various walks of life who met Srila Prabhupada over the years. The result is that we have a rich, composite view of Srila Prabhupada, drawn from many persons who knew him in many different situations and stages of his life. The acknowledgement section in this book lists the persons who cooperated to bring about Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta. Despite the authorized nature of this book, and despite the support of many well-wishers, I must confess that in attempting to describe the glories of our spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, I am like a small bird trying to empty the ocean by carrying drops of water to the land. The picture I have given of Srila Prabhupada is only a glimpse into his unlimited mercy, and that glimpse has only been possible by the grace of Guru and Krishna. Signed, Satsarup Das Goswami. Who would you like to read the introduction?
From childhood, Srila Prabhupada worshipped Lord Krishna, understanding him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of all existence. And beginning at age 22, after his first meeting with his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada became more and more active in spreading the teachings of Lord Krishna. In Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta Volume 1, we see Srila Prabhupada struggling alone to publish Back to Godhead magazine, personally typing, editing, visiting the printer, and then distributing the copies on the street of New Delhi. Working alone in Jhansi, India, Prabhupada gathered a few part-time followers to create the League of Devotees, an early attempt to enact his vision of introducing people from all nations, races, and levels of society to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada was still alone as he arrived in America in 1965 but he was filled with faith in Krishna and determination to establish Krishna consciousness in the West, and thus fulfill the desire of his spiritual master and the prediction of the scriptures and previous saints. Young men and women on New York's Lower East Side joined, attracted not so much to Vedic culture as to Swamiji and his chanting of Hare Krishna. Thus, beginning from a small storefront, Srila Prabhupada introduced the Hare Krishna movement to America. We follow Srila Prabhupada to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury during the hippie heyday of 1967, as he establishes his Krishna consciousness movement there, just as he had done in New York City. Then in May of 67, he appeared to suffer a heart attack and retired to India to recuperate. It became even clearer that the Krishna consciousness movement, its life and its growth, depended entirely upon him. Although a few dozen sincere workers were dedicated to his service, they felt helpless and incompetent to do any missionary work, or even to maintain their own spiritual vows to abstain from illicit sex, meat-eating, intoxication, and gambling, unless he were personally present to lead them. In December 1967, Srila Prabhupada returned to America and his young spiritual family. As Srila Prabhupada would comment several years later, his movement didn't really begin until his return to America in December 1967. His time was limited, he knew. The heart attack had proven that. Now, in whatever time was left, he had to accomplish his mission. And as his International Society for Krishna Consciousness began to grow, it gradually spread beyond its simple and sometimes humorous beginnings to become a spiritual institution considered noteworthy even among world religions. In the present volume, we follow Srila Prabhupada through the years of his greatest active participation in ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, as its sole leader. In 1968, Srila Prabhupada has approximately 50 disciples and 6 ISKCON centers. Although his followers have increased their numbers, most of them are no more than sincere neophytes. Prabhupada is personally available to each of his disciples, and he begins to manage and maintain each ISKCON center. Then, in July of 1970, Srila Prabhupada forms his governing body commission and begins to turn over ISKCON's management to his board of GBC secretaries. Yet we find Prabhupada still actively guiding the activities of his society, expanded by 1971 to 600 disciples and 65 centers. Although the teachings of Krishna consciousness have existed since time immemorial within India's Sanskrit Vedic literatures and are the origin and essence of all religious expression, until Srila Prabhupada began his preaching, Krishna consciousness in its original purity had never been widely spread. In the most popular and basic Vedic text, Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna teaches that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that real religion, real knowledge, and real endeavor can be understood only when one dedicates his life to the loving service of the Lord. Only full surrender to the Supreme can bring one freedom from the laws of karma and the cycle of repeated birth and death. Srila Prabhupada was convinced that devotional service to Lord Krishna is life's goal, and that to engage others in devotional service is the highest welfare activity, and these convictions drove him in his traveling and preaching on behalf of his spiritual master and Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada's success in spreading Krishna consciousness was due to his being directly empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chaitanya Charitamrita states, Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtana, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tara Pavatana. The fundamental religious system in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Unless empowered by Krishna, one cannot propagate the Sankirtan movement. Yet although Srila Prabhupada was empowered, his life story is not one in which success comes neatly and automatically, everything being miraculously enacted by God. Rather, Srila Prabhupada's story is one of constant attempts on behalf of his spiritual master. Successes come, but only after great endeavor and faith. Prabhupada encountered difficulties in trying to spread love of God in a godless world. He sometimes met opposition from governments, the media, and religionists, including those in India, and even within his own society, he met difficulties caused when his neophyte disciples fell to the allurements of the material world. Yet through all difficulties, Srila Prabhupada persevered with the sublime tolerance, kindness, and unflinching determination of a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. By material standards, it is extraordinary that a person of Srila Prabhupada's age could constantly travel, confront problems and opposition, and simultaneously produce volume after volume of translated Vedic literatures. But material vision cannot comprehend Srila Prabhupada's activities. He was truly a Mahatma, as described by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. The Mahatmas are always working under the direction of my internal energy. In spreading Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada was far from merely a religious zealot trying to increase a sect. His writing, traveling, and preaching were done in pure devotion to Lord Krishna and were therefore transcendental. It was Krishna himself Srila Prabhupada saw, who was bringing the results. Lord Chaitanya has stated, Priti viti acheyata nagaradi gama, sarvatra prachara hoibe moranama. In every town and village, the chanting of my name will be heard. These words, directly spoken by Lord Chaitanya, are certainly true. The Lord's prediction must come to pass. Many Gaudiya Vaishnavas, however, even as recently as the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, considered the Lord's prediction problematic. The name of Lord Chaitanya in every town and village, should this be taken allegorically? Certainly the Americans, the Europeans, the Africans, the Polynesians, the Mongolians, the uncultured Mlecchas outside of India could never become Vaishnavas. Thus Lord Chaitanya's words had seemed an enigmatic topic for speculation. Srila Prabhupada, however, was under orders from his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to preach Krishna consciousness beyond India. And alone, in 1965, he took the great step and left India, crossed the Atlantic, and began the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in New York City. Although some of Prabhupada's godbrothers had gone to England some 30 years before, they had failed to establish anything and had even concluded that to give Krishna consciousness to the Western people was not possible. But Srila Prabhupada, fulfilling Lord Chaitanya's prediction, traveled and employed his disciples in traveling to open centers in New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Montreal, Buffalo, Seattle. He also sent his disciples abroad to London and other countries. They succeeded where Prabhupada's godbrothers had failed. As the present volume explains, Srila Prabhupada traveled not only to enlist new devotees and establish Krishna consciousness in new places around the world, but also to maintain what he had already begun. Had he not continued to travel to each temple, instructing his disciples, observing their progress, correcting their mistakes, raising the standard of their Krishna consciousness, the devotees would not have been able to continue. Repeatedly, Prabhupada had to go around the world. Srila Prabhupada, by his faith in Krishna, by his selfless dedication to the order of his spiritual master, and by the blessings of Lord Chaitanya, did what no one else could have done. As Chaitanya Charitamrita states, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tara Pravatana. Only one empowered by Lord Krishna can actually spread the chanting of Hare Krishna around the world. This volume is an account of years of struggle and ultimate fulfillment in Srila Prabhupada's life, and I invite the reader to relish them. Here is the rags to riches story of one who started alone with nothing, but whose movement, writing, and personal life created an astounding and permanent impression on the world. By following Srila Prabhupada through these times, we gain an understanding of his exalted and humble life. I'm unable to describe Srila Prabhupada fully. I have therefore composed an invocation praying that I will be permitted to tell this story purely from the transcendental viewpoint. Otherwise, it would be ruined and incomprehensible. When properly told, the life of the pure devotee brings the greatest joy and benefit to the hearers.
Invocation. According to Krishna Das Kaviraj, an invocation involves offering obeisances, defining the objective, and bestowing benedictions. I offer my respectful obeisances to my eternal spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose service is my life and soul. It is for his pleasure that I offer Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta as an act of devotional service. He has blessed the entire world with Krishna consciousness, and he is therefore the best friend of all people and all living entities. He is the most powerful Acharya, delivering pure love of God, and he is delivering the message of Lord Chaitanya strictly in disciplic succession. No one else has ever spread Krishna consciousness as widely as he. I am praying that he will allow me to surmount the difficulties involved in presenting his biography, and that he will be pleased with the results. I am convinced that by his good wishes this work can be successful, and that if he is not pleased, I am powerless to write anything of merit. By offering obeisances to my spiritual master, I am offering respect to all other acharyas in the disciplic succession, to Srila Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to his guru, and so on, to the 6 Goswamis, Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Krishna himself. Only by the grace of Srila Prabhupada can I bow down in the temple, prostrate at the lotus feet of Gauranitai, Krishna Balaram, and Radhasham Sundar, and have access to their mercy. One objective of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta is to present the life and teachings of Srila Prabhupada in the transcendental perspective, never portraying Srila Prabhupada as an ordinary man, subject to the modes of nature. Srila Prabhupada was a divinely empowered pure devotee. He was sent to this world by the Supreme Lord just to spread the Krishna consciousness movement to people of all nations, races, classes, and creeds, and thus to offer everyone the opportunity to become a pure devotee and go back to Godhead. Another objective of this work is to attract the leaders and influential members of society to appreciate and love Srila Prabhupada. This biography must be honest, factual, and correct in transcendental knowledge, and it must captivate and please the reader. Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta must enlighten and please, and also move the reader to inquire into the writings of Srila Prabhupada. My ultimate objective is that the reader be further moved to take up service to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Although it is appropriate while writing an invocation to offer a benediction to the reader, I am fallen and cannot offer any benedictions. Yet I can confidently assure my readers that by reading the life and teachings of Srila Prabhupada, they will gain quick access to the mercy of Krishna, because it is only by the mercy of a great devotee that anyone gets the mercy of Krishna. By reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta, those who associated with and served Srila Prabhupada will refresh their remembrance of him, and thus derive ecstasy and rededication to his service. Those who never knew Srila Prabhupada will also be blessed, because according to the Vedic literatures, even a moment's association with the pure devotee can make one's life perfect. To read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta is to associate with Srila Prabhupada through the transcendental process of hearing. Therefore, although I myself cannot award any benediction to my readers, this work can do so, as it attracts everyone to Srila Prabhupada. Thus, having made the invocation to this work, offering obeisances, describing my objectives, and offering benedictions, I remain fallen and dumb, begging at the lotus feet of my Guru Maharaj and waiting for his mercy, which alone can allow this poor writer and poor devotee to speak well. My dear Srila Prabhupada, my dear Lord Krishna, if you think I can be trusted to write correctly, then please allow me to do so. There is a great need for this transcendental literature, as the human beings of Kali Yuga are in a deplorable state of spiritual blindness, with no knowledge of the relief to be gained by service to the pure devotee. The devotees of the Lord and the many sincere followers of Srila Prabhupada are eagerly receiving this work. They want to hear more and more of Srila Prabhupada's activities and instructions, and they want to see them presented expertly so that others may also become attracted to joining us in loving dedicated service to Guru and Gauranga. My dear Srila Prabhupada, I know I have to work hard to produce this literature, and I promise to do so, but my efforts will be only a spinning of concocted, empty words unless you become present in these words and bring them to life with transcendental potency. Satsvarup Das Goswami.
Okay.
That's it.
Great. That takes us up to start of chapter 1. Cliffhanger. Transcendental cliffhanger. So we've got a bit of time if anybody wants to share any reflections or comments or anything like that.
Queries.
Yeah, anything you like. Now's the time. I know I had one a question actually.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I really liked in particular was what you just read in the invocation.
Yeah.
About how coming into contact with Srila Prabhupada puts you into contact with Krishna. It's through Krishna's pure devotee that you get in contact with Krishna.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that certainly people that practice bhakti, I don't know many people that read this book regularly.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know many people that read this book, and I know I read it when I was quite early on. I still am quite early on, but very early on in trying to practice bhakti, and I read it and I was just totally blown away. It was really addictive, and I know
it's just an amazing story.
Yeah,
even just
I think we've all
life story.
We've all seen the movie.
Yeah,
you know, that the devotees made, and the movie blows everyone away. So this is kind of like the director's cut of the film.
Yeah.
And the way it's written is actually very cinematic. But anyway, yeah, we understand. I think for a lot of us, having a personal relationship with Krishna, that can often seem a bit distant and almost far-fetched, or it's not so tangible or whatever, realistic. But actually, it's really, I guess, Prabhupada's more relatable to us in our sort of conditioned state. That he seems like a more tangible, relatable
and in terms of time,
proposition.
We're very lucky because we can associate with those who knew Prabhupada personally. So in terms of time, we're fortunate we've been born at a very
special
good time.
Yeah. You were going to
say there's just this in the preface. He said, I must confess that in attempting to describe the glories of our spiritual master, I am like a small bird trying to empty the ocean by carrying drops of water to the land. And that's from that story of the
Garuda comes.
Yeah, and the mother bird is trying. I think the ocean's stolen her eggs.
That's right.
And she's so angry with the ocean. She says, I'm going to dry you up.
Get my eggs back.
She's a tiny little bird and she's taking drops of water with her beak and emptying them. And then Garuda comes and helps. Garuda is Krishna's carriage. She's the bird that carries Krishna. And he comes to her rescue, but it's because of her determination. So I was thinking if this is a nice analogy, because he's saying it's only by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada that I can do this, but equally it's my great determination that I will get your mercy. So it's a nice lesson that yes, we should be praying for mercy, but what am I doing to get that? What part am I playing?
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. I had one question actually. And then I don't know if anybody else has anything, but it was mentioned there that amongst Prabhupada's godbrothers and godsisters, so people that had the same guru as Prabhupada, they couldn't figure out. I'm paraphrasing now, but they were saying, how can you possibly take Krishna consciousness to places like Mongolia, Polynesia, and Africa, and wherever, where they're all like fallen lechers. And I was just wondering, because we've got an authentic Indian person here, Ashim's here. I was wondering if Ashim could shed a bit of light on what like lecher means, or from that kind of background. Ashim Prabhu, do you mind? Sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I didn't get your question, Prabhu. Here, could you please?
Didn't understand your question.
The question. So there was one section where that we read in the introduction, I think.
Right.
Where Srila Prabhupada's, I think it was his godbrothers, were saying it was unthinkable that people in outside of India who were mlechas, they used the word mlechas, could understand Krishna consciousness. And I was wondering if you could shed a bit of light on what that word means, and how, I don't know, maybe how people feel about that now, from an Indian point of view.
What were they thinking?
They probably called Malechas as a dog eaters, basically. They're referring to, they like in India as well, there were few people who used to be like Shudras, and below Shudras, there were people who used to be called Malechas, who used to eat, they catch hold of any animals, and they used to eat dogs and cats, and they used to do all the bad things as well. So this is one level below the Shudra level, which we are though. So they used to call Malechas. I mean, some people in India, they themselves call as Hindus. They said this thing to Prabhupada that you are going to the Western world, and anybody like the old Hindus or the non-conventional Hindus per se, they used to think that anybody who stays outside India are like Malechas. So some people, the so-called Hindus, also commented to Prabhupada that you are going to the Western world and you are giving Brahman Diksha to Malechas. I mean, that's what the kind of, I could recall, I heard in some lectures or something like this. This was the kind of a misconception, the so-called Hinduism, they call themselves a Hinduism. They had this kind of a aggression towards Prabhupada as well.
Wow, thank you. And how about now? How do people feel now?
I think people are more practical now, and they do understand that they themselves are like into this category. The India is like going more into a westernization of trying to copy the westernization culture. So they are themselves going into that hell, I would say. And the wave is at high tide in India at this moment. I reckon they want to adopt everything what is there in the Western world. They do not like to speak their own language, Hindi. They would like to speak foreign languages, English, French, German, Russian, but they do not like anybody who is speaking in Hindi. They think that he's an outcast. Anybody who is talking about spiritualism, they think he's an outcast. They want to be non-followers in any religion or non-followers in any god. They don't want to talk in their own language. They want to do something which is not conventional. They want to do something unconventional. That's how they think that so that's what I think. But there are a lot of people who are turning as well. So there are mixed number of people.
Great, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for that. It's nice to hear an insider.
Yeah, because
thing.
we don't really
know.
have that concept in
Yeah.
the West.
Yeah.
We've only learnt it from reading
Yeah, yeah.
about Vedic culture, so it's interesting to hear, because you get an idea of what they were thinking of Srila Prabhupada at the time when he said, I'm going to the West.
Yeah. And also amazing how much has changed in less than
in
100
such a
years.
short amount of time.
Yeah. Great. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or reflections or anything?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bhavani, go first, please, Mataji.
Are you sure? Oh, thank you. No, I was just going to say, as someone very, very new to the idea of Krishna consciousness, I only came to a few of your kirtans in Margate, and then since the lockdown, I've been listening to your lovely sessions online. Yeah, I really loved that beginning of the book. It was just absolutely beautiful. The humility of the author came through, and also what an inspiring life to write about. I watched the film as well some time ago after you'd mentioned doing a showing of it in Margate, and I missed it. So I kind of watched it during the lockdown, and it was so inspiring. And yes, like the author says, that is not something you can achieve on your own without being a pure devotee of Krishna. What he achieved was absolutely amazing, and I can see that. It's very moving, just even hearing the preface and the introduction. And when he went into the invocation, that was beautiful. Parts of that brought tears to my eyes. It was so beautiful, really, really beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about his life in more details. And I think also when you haven't got the film and the visual there, the visual is nice in the film, but when you're kind of reading it out and just listening to the words, things can take on a different energy and a different meaning, and kind of sink in at a different level. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hare Krishna. I think she must be a pure devotee. Moved to tears.
Yeah.
By
I
that.
think when somebody's speaking
Yeah,
from the heart, it hits you in the heart.
Yeah. And I've often also thought his qualification, that his humility, Satsarup Maharaj, that's his qualification to write like that. Yeah.
You're right. It really comes through really powerfully.
Yeah. Aaron, Prabhu.
Haribol. Yeah, thanks for that lovely reading. I'm glad I joined. I really enjoyed the invocation as well, and I thought it was interesting to see a contemporary, an up-to-date application of the system that they talk about with parampara, because it said in this how powerless he is without the mercy of Prabhupada, but Prabhupada also said how useless he is without his spiritual master. And I thought it's like that tradition giving thanks to the spiritual master that went before. It's almost like a thread that links the previous teachers back together, like a looping thread of humility. I just liked that to see an application of that in something that's newly written. I mean, is this it's a bona fide piece of literature, isn't it? So it was just interesting to see it applied again. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I also thought when we flicked through the introduction like yesterday to see how much we'd read today, I sort of skim read some of it, and I thought, well, authority is so important in spiritual life. Like Prabhupada says it over and over again, you can't just speculate. Krishna gives the yoga system in Bhagavad Gita. You can't just make up your own way of doing spiritual life. There's a science and a system behind it all. And it's you know, if like humility is important in spiritual life, authority is great because you have to be humble to accept, you know, like that. And so reading that introduction, when he starts talking, he starts quoting Krishna Kaviraj Goswami, and then he explains how actually he was given the service by his authority. Satsvarup Maharaj didn't put himself forward to write the book. It was actually the GBC who were put in place by Prabhupada. So, you know, in one sense, through the GBC, it's almost like his own spiritual master has authorized him to write the book. So when you have that weight of authority, you think, oh, this is going to be great. And also I was thinking, what Aaron said, it's kind of timeless, right?
Yeah.
Like this whole parampara system, it's beyond space and time. It's going on eternally, that this knowledge and these pastimes are being performed and everything. So when you pick up a book like this, in one sense, it feels like a kind of historical document about a person who was on this planet at a certain time. But you also feel like, wow, we've been connected to something that's well beyond New York in 1965 or whatever. You know, it's, yeah. Thanks, Aaron, for bringing that up.
Really nice.
Yeah. Wonderful. So I don't know if anyone else has any last reflections or comments that they wanted to bring up.
There was one thing that stuck out. There's one other thing that stuck out to me, which was just at the very end of the invocation. He says, there is a great need for this transcendental literature, as the human beings of Kali Yuga are in a deplorable state of spiritual blindness, with no knowledge of the relief to be gained by service to the pure devotee. It was just, I think, that at the moment we're in a deplorable state of spiritual blindness. I was thinking that, and it just made me think of the state of the world right now, and people are really crying out.
Written, do you want to have it? It will say in the front somewhere, just out of interest, maybe on the inside front cover usually it will say, if you keep going, just out of interest, first published in or something. 1980 to 1982. So I think 1980 this was published.
Yeah,
that's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So imagine what he'd say now if they were in a deplorable state then.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening. That's funny, isn't it? He's saying how important it is to hear these pastimes, given the state the world is in.
Yeah, it just seemed really, it like hit just
right.
At
Thanks
this
for picking
point
that
in
out.
time, because the world's really, I mean, the world's always been mad, really, but
but it's hitting home, I think, quite hard now.
Right now is a lot of.
You picked a good time to start reading Lilamrta. Brilliant. You picked a really good time. Great. Okay, so if no one's got anything else they'd like to say, we'll wrap it up. We've been 1 hour.
Perfect.
That's perfect, isn't it? Yeah.
An hour.
An hour. I think sometimes, you know, if we give sometimes it may be an extra 15 minutes. Yeah. You'll see the way the book is, if you are looking at one, even within a chapter, the chapters are broken down. Here they're broken down by asterisks, but on the online version, it's like a thick grey line. So the book is even broken up within the chapters into sections. So it'll be quite easy for us to read. And not have to overrun so much. But an hour or so seems good for a first effort, I think. And I think there's quite a few people that want to join the group, but maybe they're not sure that it was happening tonight or whatever.
Yeah,
so
there's quite a few people that.
Could I thing?
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I just want to say, nice to meet you, Bhavani, but also nice to see you, Ashin, because it's been a while. You look well, and I hope all your family's well as well.
Thank you. I wish the same for you. Hare Krishna, Bhavani Mataji. Hare Krishna, Aaron.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll leave it there, and we'll try and post this video into the Facebook group and let everyone else know.
Yeah.
And if we don't see you tomorrow on Facebook, we'll see you on Tuesday, maybe here. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.